Hi, my name is Ravi. Welcome to my channel Payment Talks. Welcome back to ISO PAIN.001 video series. After understanding who can initiate a PAIN1 and why, the next natural question is how is a PAIN1 message actually built? Because in payment systems, structure is everything. Banks don't process intent, they process hierarchy, grouping and repetition. This video focuses on the big picture structure of PAIN.001, the architectural layers, how payments are grouped, how single versus bulk is formed, how this compares with legacy MT101. We will not go field by field here. That deep dive comes in the next video. Before we move into the ISO PAIN.001 structure, let us understand an important concept of ISO 20022, that is cardinality. Cardinality is one of those ISO 20022 concepts that looks theoretical at first, but once you understand it, it becomes the key to reading, building and validating messages correctly, especially PAIN.001. What is cardinality? In ISO 20022, cardinality defines how many times a data element is allowed to appear in a message. In simple terms, cardinality answers how many times can any field occur. It controls whether a field is mandatory or optional and whether it can appear once or multiple times. ISO 20022 expresses cardinality using min-max format that can take natural counting whole numbers only. Common patterns are: first, 1:1. This means the field has to appear mandatorily only once. Second is 0:1. This means the field is optional. It can either appear once or not at all. Third is 1:many. It means the field is mandatory and it can also repeat. Fourth is 0:many. This means the field is optional but can repeat multiple times if needed. These are common patterns only, which means we can have any type of cardinalities, for example like 2:10, which means the field has to mandatorily appear 2 times and it can appear up to 10 times. Rule of thumb: 0 means optional, 1 means mandatory, any other number means repeatable. Many people think cardinality only means mandatory or optional. That's only half the story. Cardinality controls two things. One is the element required. Two, can it repeat? The min occurs tells us whether a field is mandatory. If min occurs is equal to 0, then it's optional field. Anything other than 0 means mandatory at least once. The max occurs tells us whether the field is repeatable or not. If max occurs is 1, then not repeatable, and if max occurs is other than 1, then it is repeatable. Please note 2 points. 1. Min occurs is always less than or equal to max occurs. 2. Max occurs is always greater than or equal to 1. This is why cardinality is more powerful than simple mandatory flag. Cardinality is defined by ISO. It's a structural rule of the message. But banks, services or rails schemes can add stricter business rules or stricter usage guidelines. For example, ISO supports multiple transactions in one PAIN.001, but CBPR restricts this, using their usage guidelines to only one occurrence of credit transaction in the PAIN.001, where the cardinality of maximum occurrence changes from repeatable in ISO to only 1 in CBPR plus. Let us clearly understand this concept using a restaurant menu analogy. In restaurant, you have many options. If you have to take only one main dish, then it is represented by 1:1. You can have only one dessert, but having dessert or not is your choice. That is your option to choose. Then this can be represented by 0:1. There are many side dishes. You have to take at least one side dish and you have option to take more than one side dish. This is represented by one to many. On your dessert or main dish, you have option of adding many toppings. But this is your wish, either to add or not. This is represented by 0 to many. With this clear understanding of cardinality, we will now move to the structure of PAIN.001. PAIN.001 belongs to ISO 20022. ISO 20022 messages are built with one clear principle. Model the business reality explicitly, not implicitly. Instead of flat tags and order dependent interpretation, ISO uses clear layers, logical grouping, strong validation and repeatable blocks. So PAIN.001 is not just an XML file. It's actually a mini payment system model inside a message. At the highest level, PAIN.001 follows a 3-layer hierarchy. Let's understand what each layer means. First is layer 1, group header. This is at a file level. Think of this as the envelope of the entire file. It answers who created this file, when was it created, how many payments are inside, what is the control sum. The key idea is everything in the file shares this context. If this layer fails validation, then entire file fails. Next is layer 2, payment information, which is at a batch level. This is the most important structural concept in PAIN.001. Each payment information block represents one debit account, one execution context. Inside one batch, we have one debtor account, one debtor bank, one execution date and many credit transfers allowed. So practically one batch is equal to one funding source. If you need multiple debit accounts or different execution dates, then you create multiple batches. Next is layer 3, credit transfer transaction, and as the name suggests, this is transaction level. This layer is inside the payment information, that is inside layer 2. This is the actual payment instruction. Each block represents one beneficiary, one credit amount, one transfer. So one transaction is equal to one payment. If you want 1000 salary payments, you repeat this block 1000 times. Tip: wherever bulk transactions are allowed, in those cases, each of this section actually will create individual payment, that is individual PAIN 8. Let us now understand how does PAIN.001 naturally support single versus bulk payments. Here is the most beautiful part of PAIN.001. There is no special bulk message. Bulk is simply created through repetition of structure. First, let us see the single payment. A single payment consists of one debit account and one credit account. The use cases can be an urgent supplier payment, a retail payment where one person initiates a payment transfer to another person, etc. Here is the structure of PAIN.001 in such scenario. The group header is always only one. Since it is a single payment with single debit, the payment information section will be only once, which carries the debtor and debtor account details with execution date. In single payment, we have only one beneficiary, that is only one creditor. So the transaction section, which contains this creditor and other transaction level details like amount, etc., will be appearing only once. CBPR usage guidelines restrict to have only one transaction per PAIN.001. So if you see the PAIN.001 schema of CBPR Plus, it will be similar to this, where the maximum occurrence of these sections is limited to 1. Next, we look at bulk payment. A bulk payment consists of one debit account with many credits happening. The use cases can be like salary payments, vendor supplier payments, every month end, etc. Here is the structure of PAIN.001 in such scenario. Group header is always only one. Since it is a bulk payment with single debit, the payment information section will be only once, which carries the debtor and debit account details with execution date. In bulk payment, we have multiple beneficiaries, that is multiple creditors with different amounts to be paid. So the transactions section which contains this creditor and other transaction level details like amount etc. will be repeated to cover all the beneficiaries. Next, we look at a scenario which makes PAIN.001 special compared to the legacy MT101 format, that is multi-debit bulk. Please note that multi-debit is possible in MT101 but with limitations of having same execution date. These limitations are not needed in the PAIN.001. The use cases would be when a corporate want to do different salary payments and vendor payments separately and want to give funds from different accounts and still want to send a single PAIN.001. Here is the structure of PAIN.001 in such scenario. Group header is always only one. Since it is a bulk payment with multi-debit, the payment information section will be repeated as a number of different debit accounts needed. Each occurrence of this section contains one debtor and debit account details with execution date. In multi-debit bulk payment, we have multiple beneficiaries with, that is, multiple creditors. So the transaction section which contains this creditor and other transaction level details like amount etc. will be repeated to cover all the beneficiaries. But from which debit account does these beneficiaries need to receive the funds? That is decided by placing these repeated transaction sections under the payment information section from which the funds need to be transferred. The main point that we need to understand here is that bulk concept in PAIN.001 is not a feature. It's simply cardinality plus hierarchy working together. This makes the design in ISO cleaner, scalable and easy to validate. Now before we move into the MT101 structure, let us quickly understand the construct of legacy empty messages, which is common to all the empty messages, as it is very important to understand this construct to appreciate the richness of ISO 20022. Every Swift empty message first passes through a standard envelope. Think of it like sending a courier package. Outside, routing and delivery info. Inside, business documents. Similarly, Swift empty messages separate network delivery from business content. All empty messages, whether MT101, MT103, MT202, MT940 etc., follow the same universal structure defined by Swift. Here is a big picture view of the empty message. These are called the 5 building blocks of empty messages. Only block 4 contains business or payment data. The rest exist for routing, control and security. Simply put, block 4 is equal to business logic. Everything else, delivery infrastructure. Let us look at the high level overview of these blocks. First is block 1, basic header block. The purpose is network routing and session identification. This block tells Swift who sent the message, which session it belongs to, how to route it internally. It is purely technical and banks don't use this for payment decisions. You can see the example here. Key characteristics are it is mandatory and always present. No business meaning, not visible to corporate users. In our parcel analogy, think block 1 as the from or return address on an envelope where the sender information is present. I'm not getting into the detailed description of blocks here when the message is received versus sent etc. We are focusing only on the high level for now, as we are covering the empty message structure for the first time in our videos. This will help you to understand the comparison of MT101 and ISO PAIN.001. Next is block 2, application header block. The purpose is to identify the message type being sent and to whom, that is receiver identification. This tells Swift which bank should receive the message, what type of message it is, 101, 103 etc. Priority of the message. Without this block, Swift wouldn't know where to deliver the message. You can see the example here. Key characteristics are it is mandatory, network level only and no payment data. In our parcel analogy, think block 2 as the destination address on envelope. Next is block 3, user header block. This is optional block. The purpose is to send the optional metadata and other extra references. Since the introduction of UETR, which is placed in this section becomes important for payment messages which are anyways deprecated now. Banks and corporates use this for tracking IDs, duplicate control, service specific fields, regulatory flags, etc. This block does not affect message structure, only adds metadata. Example can be seen here. Key characteristics are its optional, bank or custom use, not core payment logic. In our parcel analogy, think block 3 as sticky notes on envelope like tracking labels, phone numbers, etc. Next is block 4, text block. This is most important block. The purpose is the actual business message. This is where payment instructions, accounts, amounts, beneficiaries, references all reside. For MT101 specifically, sequences A and B are inside block 4. Example can be seen here. How it works. Block 4 contains tags like 20, 50, 32B, etc., where each tag has a specific meaning and purpose. Tags are basically fields equivalent in ISO which carry the information. Next, block 4 contains sequences, payment instructions, etc. Each empty message type defines which tags are allowed. Key characteristics are this block is mandatory. Business logic lives here. Passed by bank systems. In our parcel analogy, think block 4 as the actual document inside the envelope. Next is block 5, trailer block. The purpose is security, integrity and network control. This block ensures message is not tampered, integrity is maintained, authentication is possible. Example can be seen here. Key characteristics are optional but common, security focused, no business logic. In our parcel analogy, think block 5 as tamper proof seal on envelope. Putting it all together, the empty message looks like this. Key takeaway is that in every empty message, only block 4 matters for business processing. Blocks 1, 2, 3 and 5 exist purely to deliver and protect the message. Now let's look at MT101 structure before comparing it with PAIN.001. From now on, whenever we speak of the empty message, we speak only about the block 4. PAIN.001's predecessor is Swift MT101. But MT101 uses a very different design philosophy. MT101 is text based, tag sequence driven, flat and implicit grouping. Instead of hierarchy, it relies on repeated tags, sequence numbers and based on bank interpretation while processing. There is no explicit file object, batch object, transaction object like in PAIN.001. Everything is inferred. Let's look at the MT101 block 4 structure. MT101 is a two-layer structure. First layer is sequence A with single occurrence. This is file level metadata that applies to all transactions in the message. It contains common attributes like execution date, debtor account reference. Think as header of the entire payment file. The second layer is sequence B with multiple occurrences. This has individual transaction details. Each occurrence represents one payment. It contains amount, creditor details, remittance info for that specific payment. Think as line items in the payment file. Key characteristics are fixed hierarchy, meaning always sequence A first, then repeating sequence B. No explicit delimiters. Sequence B repetition is just appearance of tag that belongs to the next iteration. Shared attributes. This is all sequence B transactions inherit sequence A settings unless overridden. Example of override is debit account of sequence B overrides debit account of sequence A with restrictions. Atomic message. That is, one complete MT101 equals one business instruction set. MT101 can simply be represented as one file header, that is sequence A, plus multiple transactions, that is sequence B. Let us now see how MT101 is represented in single and bulk structures. For a single payment, we will have only one occurrence of sequence A and one occurrence of sequence B. That is straightforward. For a bulk payment, we will have only one occurrence of sequence A and multiple occurrence of sequence B. As you can see, there is no hierarchical structure. It is a flat structure with repetitive tags where banks have to infer based on the availability of tags during the parsing of the message. And there are no specific delimiters to differentiate the occurrence of sequence B. Usually, the appearance of the mandatory tag 21 is assumed to be the start of next sequence. Now that we understand both the structures clearly, we shall now compare both the structures side by side to understand the differences. As you can see, core conceptual differences are: first is hierarchical depth, 3 levels versus 2 levels. PAIN.001 has clear file, batch and transaction differentiation, whereas MT101 has only file and transaction levels. Batch concept is implied and not explicit. PAIN.001 explicitly separates file controls with group header, batch grouping with payment info, and transaction details with credit transfer transaction information block. Whereas MT101 collapses batch level into info into sequence A, forcing all transactions to share the same execution date and debtor account. The next difference is repetition pattern. In PAIN.001 we have one group header which never repeats and payment info which can be repeated, and under each payment info credit transfer transaction information which can be repeated inside each payment info section. Whereas in MT101 we have one sequence A which never repeats and multiple sequence B which repeats. The next important difference is the batch flexibility. MT101 has limitation here. Sequence A attributes apply to all sequence B. Single execution date, single debtor account if present in sequence A, single service level. Whereas PAIN.001 has batch flexibility. Each payment info can have different execution dates, different debtor accounts and different booking preferences. To understand these differences, let us see business scenarios and compare both formats. For a single payment scenario like retail payments or one-off urgent payments from corporate, both the formats have identical capability. You can see the both structures here. PAIN.1 with one group header, one payment info and one transaction. Similarly, MT101 has one sequence A and one sequence B. For a bulk scenario with single debit like payment of salaries or payment of suppliers, we can have clean mapping between both formats. As you can see, PAIN.001 has one group header, one payment info and 100 transactions for 100 employee salaries. Similarly, MT101 has one sequence A with 100 sequence B for 100 employee salaries. We shall discuss the fields and mapping in detail in the next videos. For a bulk scenario with multiple debits and multiple execution dates, like salary payments to be made on 1st and supplier payments to be made on 5th of every month, then in this scenario PAIN.001 wins. This is not possible in MT101 without splitting the message into two separate MT101s. As you can see, PAIN.001 in one file has one group header, first payment info with the payroll debit account with the 1st Jan execution date and 100 salary beneficiaries under first payment info. Then second payment info with the supplier's debit account with the 5th Jan execution date and 50 supplier beneficiaries under second payment info. Whereas MT101 is split into two separate messages. Message 1 has sequence A with payroll debit account and 1st Jan execution date with 100 sequence B having salary beneficiaries. Message 2 has sequence A with the supplier debit account and 5th Jan execution date with 50 sequence B having supplier beneficiaries. One important observation is that most banks today convert MT101 internally into ISO like hierarchical structures anyway, which tells us that PAIN.001 reflects how banks actually process payments today, while MT101 reflects how payments were processed decade ago. Final takeaway is that MT101 is structurally flat and interpretation based, while PAIN.001 is hierarchical and explicitly modeled. MT101 says, here are instructions, figure them out. PAIN.001 says, here is the exact structure, process it. MT101 thinks, one header, many transactions. PAIN.001 thinks, one file, many batches, many transactions. That's the real evolution of MT to ISO 20022. Why structure matters before going field level. Understanding structure first is critical because without structure, fields feel random, validation feels confusing, bulk logic feels magical. But with the structure, everything has a place and everything has a purpose. Fields only make sense inside their layer. With this, we come to the end of this video. In the next video, we go into details of the field level information and the mapping transformations. Until then, keep smiling and keep learning. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, please like, subscribe and share for more such interesting topics on payments.